Hey there, everybody. Matt Lawrence with deWiz Golf back here on the deWiz Golf YouTube channel. A little bit different setup that we got going on today is now we're looking to hear a little bit from our users, some of the people out there that are using deWiz and how that can help you at home and figure out how best to use deWiz for your own game. I'm joined by Chris Mielke, who joins us from outside Chicago, where we were just talking a little bit about how your outdoor golf season is wrapping up there in the Illinois area, but now shifting inside, working on the simulator, and now, as you said, your deWiz season is getting ready to begin. But so, Chris, first off, before we get into deWiz itself, just interested, you as a golfer, what's your background? How long have you been playing, and what type of golfer would you consider yourself?
Well, I'm a six handicapper currently. I started playing when I was very, very young. Obviously, like many people, grew up in a family that had played golf. My grandpa, my dad, and all that other stuff. And I was actually a pretty fair junior golfer in high school. I did not play golf in college, but I did qualify for the Michigan State team at that point, and just opted to concentrate on my studies at that point because I was kind of I wasn't going to play, and that was kind of the I didn't end my golf career at that point, but I did kind of pause it. I still got together with my friends, on and off through the years, but I kind of at that point was almost a 5 times a year player. Got married, had kids, all those things that happen. And unfortunately, I did infect my children with my golf disease. But at some point when my daughter went off to college, I kind of woke up and said, wait a second, I got time to do this again. Because that was really my biggest critical factor. Was all of a sudden I didn't have time working, all those things that happen as you get older. And then basically I was like, wow, let's do this again. And so I got heavily involved in it. I got addicted back to it again. It was like an old friend in that realm. And I think I started like about a 15, and I've steadily worked it down to about 6. I'm being 55, I'm not as long as I used to be, but I still enjoy the game and have fun with it.
It's so many people, like, they go away from it for a little bit, and then the second you pick up that club again, it's just right back in there with you. So, Chris, now I want to shift over to deWiz itself. And, I look at our user report. I look at the usage report every day, every week. And you're up there as one of the heaviest users that we have, not just in the US, but worldwide. And I'm just curious, when you first thought back to when you first got deWiz, what was a part of your game necessarily that you were working on, or what was it that attracted you about deWiz that you thought was going to be able to help you with your game?
Yeah, I think I started getting lessons. This is going back. I'm trying to remember exactly when I purchased it, but I was taking lessons regularly, like once a month, because that's what my schedule allowed. And literally what I do is, and I was getting great feedback. I was working with a coach whose feedback I trusted, but it was really hard in between lessons to continue that. I'm going to be a walking ad at this point, but is my feel real? And how does that look? And what I found out over a period of months was that it really wasn't. What I thought was, taking the club back correctly, getting it back, and all those things, especially in the transition, because I was coming over the top quite a bit at that point. How do I make that feel real, and how do I give myself feedback in between the month-long lesson? Because inevitably what would happen is I'd sit down with the coach, and they'd look over my swing, and they'd still tell me I'm swinging in to out. And I'd be like, what are you talking about? I'd question whether or not it was right. And I'd look at the video, and sure enough, it was. And so I was really looking for something that would give me that feedback to show where the transition was, and allow me to keep progressing in the allowable time that I had to practice in between, the month-long lessons. And that's really where I started with deWiz. I've used it for other things, which we can get into later in this call. But that was kind of where I started.
Looking at that transition, was that something, maybe you're showing it to your coach, and I don't know, did you work with it at all with your coach in those lessons, or was it more?
I didn't start that way.
Okay.
What I did was I started looking at the transitions, tried to understand, how to take the club back, how to bring it back to the inside, how to make sure I'm not swinging over the top like this, how I'm sliding down underneath it, and getting that feedback that way really helped me. And the other piece where it was really helpful to me was, as you've said on the YouTube videos many times, I don't need to be hitting golf balls on a range in order to get the feedback. So what I ended up doing is I'd go to the health club in the morning. I'd set up my wiffle balls in a court, which is what I'll do a lot of hitting now. And the nice thing about the deWiz is that it's giving me that feedback with a wiffle ball. And I'm able to disconnect from the results that are out there on the range from the ball. And I'm able to just focus in on what the repetitive movement is that I'm trying to achieve. And I'm really not concerned about what's going out there, because inevitably what I was doing as a practicer and as a player, obviously you're concerned about it. But as a practicer, you're like, your tunnel vision. Oh, that one faded. Oh, that one hooked. Oh, that one did this. Whereas with a wiffle ball, or even without the wiffle ball, it just allows you to disconnect from that. And so at some point, I decided to start showing that, that data to my coach and saying, as I was progressing, and sometimes I'd regress, as I try to make changes, or they'd add stuff, some more complexity to what I was doing. But at least gave me a baseline to refer to, and start to really have some success in between those, month here, month there, those gaps that I have.
Let's talk a little numbers here, because I think when we look at the transition, that is the number one thing that we see our users working on. And especially for the mid to high handicapper, that seems to be the one area of a lot of people's games that they are turning to deWiz for. So when you look at your transition numbers, what were they when you first started with deWiz? What were you then working towards? And now, if you're looking at your transition numbers, what are those, currently in your swing?
Well, if you look at where I started, I was probably about, I'm going to go in inches. I know a lot of times Marcus does in centimeters, but I am in the US and centimeters are still nebulous to me. I was probably about 1.2, 1.5 over at that particular point. I'm sure on the golf course, it's different than in my practice. I really look forward to the feature that I think you saw that DJ was using, that allows me to see how I'm doing on the course better. I have played with it on the course, but it's just a different type of thing. So I really look forward to when that feature, the new feature, is rolled out, so that I could just take it out and kind of screw around a little bit on the golf course a little bit and see how that does. But I've steadily worked it down to, I'm probably still a little over the top for sure, but there are some swings where I'm definitely coming down from the inside. But I'm really working towards more being on plane, more so than underneath, because I originally wanted to, hopefully, everybody wants to be Rory McIlroy, but I realized that I probably have a lifetime of trying to undo something that was probably always that way, which is probably a little bit more difficult for somebody in my age category.
We talked a little bit, and you've mentioned to me that you have some, kind of unique and creative ways of using deWiz, and I'm interested to hear those, and I think people are going to be interested to hear those as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think the big thing is, which I spoke of earlier, was, I hit a lot of wiffle balls off a mat. I spend the bulk of my practice time, because that's when I have it. I get done working out. It's almost like a practice, literally I'll spend 20 minutes sitting there in a racquetball court at my health club, because not many people play racquetball anymore. And I hit wiffle balls into that. I'll also, when I travel, I have a little bit of a weighted thing, because I do travel a lot for work. I will, take the deWiz with me. I'll swing it in my room. The funny thing was, I want to go a little off of what I was thinking of, but I wish I did more work on the wedges part of it, because when I did a lot of work with those, boy, I hit some really good wedges. But I then started really focusing on the transition, which is what we're talking about. And I ended up doing that in my room as well. And so I was just taking the weight, try to mimic the weight of a club, because I found that to be more helpful to me, was to either have something that's a little bit more in the weighted club, but at least have something in my hands that mimics some kind of weight in my hands to show, okay, this is what I need to do. This is how it's going out. I didn't find it as useful to just swing with my hands, because it just I didn't find it related to too much. It was just too easy to then transition to the inside. I did try that initially at first, but I didn't find that it worked or was as repetitive as or helpful to me. So that's really kind of the two ways. I think the other thing that I do is I actually warm up on my back. I couldn't do it today because there's snow there, but before I go play around, I will hit a few range balls out in the range, but I'll end up hitting wiffle balls in my backyard. And I find the deWiz invaluable in warming up, mainly because it gets me started. I know what the swing feels like, and all of those things in some fashion or another. And if I go out on that first tee and I know that I'm hitting my numbers correctly, it really gets me started in the round. The hard part is maintaining that through 18 holes, as I'm sure everybody, listening to this knows. But it really helps me get off on that first hole, knowing what I'm trying to accomplish, knowing that my swing is the right length, that the transition is in an area that I'm pleased with, and exactly more importantly, the length of backswing is another thing I've been working on recently, and looking at that number, and that I've got that length of backswing to make sure that I can accomplish the goals with the transition that I have.
And what you mentioned right there about warming up, I think is very valuable, because a lot of players, I'm a 10 handicap myself, and a lot of people like me, you show up to the range, you show up to the first tee, and that first swing, it's like, I don't really know what I have today. Let's see what I have today. And when you're on the range, and for me, I have a good understanding of what my general numbers are when I'm working on the range and I'm in a practice round. And when I go out there and I warm up and I'm hitting a couple balls, if I see that those numbers align with what I'm accustomed to seeing, that goes a long way just for my confidence. And I'm seeing that, it's like, okay, I'm where I'm supposed to be, because sometimes you get out there on the range and, for players like us, like, sometimes you don't know what you're going to have. And when you can get that confidence boost, that goes a long way, stepping up to the first tee. Chris, this has been really valuable. I think a lot of people are going to find a lot of value in this. I want to give you the opportunity now, and I'm going to do this as we interview more of our users moving forward. What are some maybe questions that you have, that you've come across in your usage, anything related to the data, or something that you think might be a question that other users out there might have?
I think the big thing that I learned myself, and I think would be helpful is obviously there's that lag where everything kind of settles, and then you take it back. I've gotten used to, sometimes when I know I move fast, because I try to make sure I pause and then take it back, which is different than basically what I do on the golf course, which is try to make sure it's kind of an athletic move of some sort. That's what I find. But in order to get the best readings, that pause has to take place, because otherwise I'll look at something and I know feels sometimes aren't real, but it's like, okay, that number doesn't make sense. And then sure enough, when I make the pause, I actually go and do it. And then sure enough, it's back to where I expected it to be. And so that's kind of the one learning that took me a little while to ingrain in myself before I did that. I'm trying to think, the big thing that I think would make a great suggestion on improving it is in the deWiz section is, it'd be great to have like an AI that, when you go through that and then it knows, like, I know, and I can do it myself, don't get me wrong, but it'd be really nice to have them all of a sudden throw, okay, I can't get 40 inches. Okay. And it's going to keep throwing 40 at you, and, have that separate from the contest that I've seen you running. But, that would be a great little add-on of some sort to say, yeah, this person really struggles at I struggle at like 27, 28. That's just not a swing for me that does really well. And that's something that I'd love to see, or maybe, I'm trying to envision, some sort of contest we could have with some of the other things. And I'll leave that up to somebody else who's better at designing those in some fashion or another. But like I said earlier, when I use that deWiz, I do so much better with those little half wedge shots, and I feel really confident with those. That's one of the things that's really improved for me. So that's kind of an overview of things that improvements. Yeah, if the lag could be a little shorter, that'd be great. But sometimes, considering how revolutionary it is, it's challenging, I can imagine.
And I'm glad you brought up the deWiz part of that, because to me, there's so much more within that deWiz feature that we can use and incorporate into our game, more than just, either the deWiz challenge or working on your wedge game. One thing that I like to do, and I don't know if other people out there do this, I think I put it up on Instagram a while back. But when you're in the deWiz feature and you're setting your different gears, what I like to do is set your 3 gears for your wedge length. So for me, I do 29, 34, and 41 are my 3 wedge lengths. But then what I also like to do is set that 4th gear to my driver length of backswing. So what that does is, when I'm practicing, it will randomly throw out, okay, 53 inches. Okay, I know I grab my driver and I'm going to mix in a driver swing, because that it creates a more of a realistic practice environment. Because
Right.
when you're on the course, you're not just going to be hitting wedges over and over again,
Yep.
but to mix in that full swing, because for a lot of us, it is a driver wedge sort of
Yep.
game. And so when you mix in that driver swing, so set your fourth gear to your driver swing and then mix that in, and now you have that intermittent of, okay, here's a full swing, back to a wedge, back to a full swing, maybe you have two in a row, and then that just mixes it up a little bit more, to give you a little bit more versatility within that disc wedges mode.
No, that's a great idea. I'll have to give that one a shot. And one of the things I was thinking about that I've used it for, I haven't done it recently, but everybody's got those punches underneath trees that they have. Most people have like 7, 9 iron, 6 iron, whatever is their favorite punch club. And one of the things that I did was, you can't get the roll, but I went to like a TrackMan and ended up doing a disc wedge with that to try and gauge. Okay, I now know when I have 110 or something, it's getting me closer to the green with that little punch shot. And I mean, you could do that with just about any club you want to, if you want to write that down. I happen to do it because I routinely go back with a punch and go, okay, this one I know is if I'm at 30 inches, I know this 6 iron is going to go this far, or whatever that is. And that's proved to be invaluable in some fashion or another, because then how far you're going to land it at with the SkyTrack. You don't know how far it's going to roll, but still, it's still a haphazard shot. And that's one of the, so then you can practice that as well. And so that's something I've found invaluable.
Chris, this has been an awesome conversation. I guess I'll get you out of here with this. You mentioned being in the Chicago area, going to be moving indoors. Any indoor practice routines that you do, or what does your indoor golf situation look like?
Well, what I look forward to this year is really getting the irons down, getting the wedges down. I didn't have the deWiz last year, and then I was busy playing, and I really hope to kind of get my whole bag gapped in some fashion or another. Using the TrackMan, using the deWiz, and again, referring back to 20, what's 27, what's 35, what's 53, that kind of thing. That's what I really hope to get done this year, and really get some practice in trying to do that. And again, it's going to be the indoor wiffle balls into the screen, and working on the things that help me.
Well, Chris, thanks so much for taking the time out of your day to hop on here on the YouTube channel. If you're a user out there, you want to chat with me, you want to come onto our channel, talk a little bit more about your experience with deWiz. If you have any questions, feel free, reach out to me, matt@dewizgolf.com. Super easy email, just matt@dewizgolf.com. We're happy to bring you on the show. And I think it's really important that we hear from not only our coaches, not only our ambassadors, but our everyday users as well. So Chris, I appreciate you being the first one to hop on here with me.
No, thanks, Matt. It's been fun, and I learned something myself out of it. So this is great.
If you have a comment for Chris, leave it down below in the comment section, and we'll get you hooked up with Chris. Thanks so much once again, and we'll see you next time here on the deWiz Golf YouTube channel.